In conflict, be fair and generous. This is a popular saying by a Chinese philosopher, Lao Tzu. However, more often than not, we end up being competitive to get our way whenever trying to resolve a conflict. Hi, and welcome to the third chapter of conflict resolution. In this chapter, we will talk about a quadrant that was designed by Kenneth and Ralph Kilmann. Kenneth and Ralph defined 5 conflict management styles based on 2 key variables. First, being assertive, and second, cooperative. Assertive is essentially focus on self, while cooperative lays importance to the relationship with the other party or parties. Let's see how it looks when plotted on a quadrant. The x-axis shows cooperative approach, while the y-axis represents the assertive approach. The first quadrant, low assertive and low cooperative at the bottom left, shows the avoiding conflict management style. This is essentially where one or both parties avoid confrontation. They stay clear of the conflict territory. Now, this is a great approach in 2 situations. First, if the matter is trivial. If trivial also seems to be repetitive, it's best to ditch the avoiding approach and actually face the conflict. Second is if there is temper or lack of preparation. Like in the previous chapter, we spoke of perceiving emotions and identifying the right time to discuss a conflict situation. In these cases, avoiding is a good way to prevent further damage. Let's take Donna and John's situation from the last chapter. When Donna asked John about his ongoing projects, and if John would have responded to that question with stress or how rough the week has been, Donna would have chosen the avoiding approach. It is best for Donna to avoid any conflict at this moment to keep the situation from escalating. There would be no short-term benefit of trying to manage the situation, but in the long run, the conflict will have to be faced. Both the parties will have to move away from avoiding style and adopt an approach that will be more suitable. 2 important points to remember about the avoiding approach. 1. It involves avoiding decision making at all costs. And second, it should be used sparingly. This approach should not be an escape route, but if the situation is about to change, one may use it. For example, if one of you is leaving the organization, or the project is being handed over to a new department, etc. Or in Donna's case scenario, it's only being used for the time being, with the intention to face the decision-making process at a better, more constructive time. Let's look at the second approach, the top left corner. High assertive but low cooperative. This conflict management style is called competing. A competing conflict management style focuses only on self, and it pays no regard on the other side's arguments. In Donna and John's case, Donna could have focused on getting her way without paying much attention to John's needs. But in this case, when dealing with demotivation, high assertive will not be the best approach because it puts winning for self above anything else. So when is it a good approach to follow? Competing works like a charm if the deadlines are tight, or if you know 100% you are right and need to set the record straight. So let's take a different case scenario here. Say the HR team of an organization has come together with pros and cons of multiple learning organizations. The purpose is to run organization-wide sessions for consultative selling. Among all the contenders, HR manager narrows down to Provis as a good learning solution provider for the needs identified. The arguments to choose Provis are strong, but a few others want to take some time before hitting the go button. The requirement is time pressed, raised by a client. In a situation like this, the HR manager can effectively use the competing approach. She is sure of the decision, aware of the paucity of time, and hasn't heard any credible argument against Provis. So she uses her authority to assert the decision. Competing is usually won by way of argument, authority, or a politically powerful position, and regular use could lead to a hostile work environment. Hence, first, choose the right time to use the competing approach. And second, make sure you don't create an environment where your team members stop sharing their perspective because they feel they don't have a say anyway. Let's look at the third conflict management style. High cooperative, low assertive, the extreme opposite of competing. This management style is called accommodating. Accommodating approach usually requires you to give more weightage to the other side vis-a-vis your own requirements. So in what kind of cases will this be a useful strategy? 1. When you realize that the other person is right, or second, when preserving the relationship or building emotional credit is foremost in your strategy. Let's take an example of the latter here. Neith has recently started her own web design company. Her first paying client, Mahima, has given her a scope of work. But there are multiple change requests that have come in. Now, Neith does not want to do these changes at no cost, and she wants to push back. However, Mahima takes on a competing approach over here to manage the disagreement and asserts that the new requests don't need a lot of effort. Neith is looking at long-term projects from Mahima and agrees to the new requests at no additional cost. Her objective is preserving the relationship and giving this win to Mahima. So, two important points in accommodating approach are: one, it's a selfless and sacrificing approach, usually taken to preserve the relationship, like in Neith's case scenario. Or it could be used in non-important matters like watching a movie, choosing a restaurant, so on and so forth. Another case scenario is where you are heavily outpowered. There is no possible win. That's when a party might take the accommodating approach. Let's look at the fourth conflict management style, which is a blend of assertive and cooperative at the same levels. It's called compromising. And it's exactly how it sounds. It's a good old 50-50 solution. Neither your nor my expectations will be completely met, but some of them will be met. So it's not completely satisfying, but it's also not a total bummer. Sales negotiations are actually an excellent example of compromising approach. You win some, you lose some. That's the principle it works on. You must have found yourself in a situation very often when you're trying to purchase a gadget. The example over here shows a salesperson who's trying to sell a mobile which is worth INR 80 grands, but also offers a 10% store discount. But you went to the market with a budget as high as INR 65,000. The salesperson tries to meet you halfway and suggests a 75,000 bill but with an additional accessory. Now, this is a case scenario we all find ourselves regularly in. The salesperson and the buyer are both trying to get the best deal they can, but have to forego a little of their original ask. Also notice that none of them are trying to assert their position, but rather trying to honor the other person's ask as best as they can. Two things to keep in mind when you're going with the compromising approach is: one, evaluate how much you agree to give up and that you don't give up anything that you can't do without. And second, be aware if the other side is starting out with an exaggerated position. The final conflict management style is collaborating. One of the best ones, but also one of the most time-consuming and effort-consuming ones. It's high assertive and also high cooperative in nature. Collaborating conflict management style works on the motto of finding a solution that works for everybody, and that requires effort. It's also called the win-win strategy. It requires creative thinking to look for a solution out of the box, something that you weren't thinking of. It requires open discussion of concerns and commitment from every party. None of the people involved should feel threatened or vulnerable, like one might feel in a competing style. It's easy to confuse competing and collaborating approaches. Collaboration requires the emotional strength and state to listen and absorb to the other side and creatively look for a solution that satisfies all the parties involved. On the other hand, competing is all about winning for self. My interest lies before yours does. The case scenario over here is a discussion between Banner, who's head of business development, and Natasha, who's head of customer relations. Banner has junior design resources in his team right now, while Natasha has 3 senior resources. And Banner raises this as a concern to Natasha. He raises his concern about he requires at least 1 senior resource and if Natasha could spare Stark to work with his team. Natasha suggests that she actually requires 3 resources for the volume of requests she gets from the clients. Both of them together come up with a solution to reassign a junior designer from Banner's team to Natasha's team and bringing Stark on board with Banner's team. That's creative thinking and not putting only one's own self-interest ahead. So collaborating approach is one, it's the win-win strategy, but it's very difficult to implement. It requires effort, it requires time, and it requires an open state of mind. So this was about chapter 3. In the next lessons, we will look at important considerations while resolving conflicts and proven approaches to resolve workplace conflicts. And while we work on those chapters, please let us know if you enjoyed